Imagine this. It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? You spend maybe a decade, maybe longer, just relentlessly pursuing financial independence.
Hmm.
Optimizing every spreadsheet, hitting that extreme savings rate, working the crazy long hours it takes.
Right. The whole 9 yards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, finally, you hit that FI finish line, you pull the trigger on retirement, only to realize you're just too burned out, too
Yeah.
emotionally drained, maybe even physically sick from all those years of chronic stress to actually, enjoy the freedom you fought so hard for.
It really is the cruelest twist. That core promise of FIRE. It's about freedom, right? Designing this life you love.
Hmm.
But that super aggressive path, it often demands such extreme sacrifice, sacrificing the present,
Completely.
that it basically replaces the 9 to 5 stress with this constant self-imposed anxiety, financial fear, chronic exhaustion.
Mm.
It's rough.
Yeah, our sources today really highlight that blind spot in let's call it the traditional fire story, this idea you have to sacrifice everything now for some perfect future utopia.
A utopia that, frankly, might never feel as good as you imagine once you get there, especially if you're already running on empty.
Precisely. And look, this deep dive isn't about knocking the goal of financial independence itself. That's a worthy goal. It's about looking really critically at the method.
The how.
The how, exactly. We're kind of flipping the script today. We're digging into research, columns from financial psychologists, even critiques from inside the FEI community.
Yeah, people have been through it.
And all these sources, they treat your mental and physical health not as some afterthought, something you deal with after you retire,
Mm-hmm.
but as core financial assets,
Yeah.
non-negotiable assets you have to protect right now. So welcome to Project Fire.
Glad to be diving in.
Today, our mission is really to unpack the very real, measurable financial costs of burnout and explore how building wealth can actually be sustainable, maybe even enjoyable, and definitely strategic for the long haul.
What jumps out immediately from these analyses is just how strong that link is between mental health and the bottom line.
Yeah.
This isn't just, fluffy self-care talk.
Right.
It's critical risk management. It's financial preservation.
Yeah.
The data is pretty clear. Chronic stress is a quantifiable financial liability.
A liability, that's a strong word.
It is. And it can totally derail even the best financial plans. If you're aiming for FI, you really need to understand the true cost of that chronic stress before it costs you, say, years of earning potential,
Or worse.
or forces you into a reactive career change you weren't ready for, or even, tragically, costs you half your savings in a relationship breakdown fueled by that stress.
It's serious stuff.
Okay, let's really unpack this thing. Burnout. The word gets thrown around so much, doesn't it?
All the time.
We say burned out when we just mean like tired or stressed or maybe just overwhelmed from a busy week.
Right, it's become kind of a catch-all. But the sources we looked at, they draw on, actual organizational psychology clinical definitions. They make it super clear burnout is distinct. It's a severe syndrome.
It's specifically from chronic, unmanaged workplace stress. That's the key part.
Okay, so not just any stress, but work-related, long-term, and unmanaged.
Exactly. And it leads to this deep emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion. It just slowly chips away at your ability to function, leaving you feeling completely depleted, like right down to your core.
It's so important we make that distinction, right, between burnout and just, normal stress, especially for the high achiever crowd.
Absolutely. The World Health Organization even classifies occupational burnout. It's seen as this specific work-related thing that happens when chronic workplace stress just hasn't been managed successfully.
And it's sneaky, isn't it? Especially in the kind of culture needed for that aggressive FI path.
Oh, totally insidious.
Right.
Because in those environments, high finance, medicine, tech, law, the very behaviors that lead to burnout are often rewarded.
Like what?
Like stoicism, never showing weakness. Extreme self-sacrifice, working crazy hours, constantly overextending yourself. Those things are often seen as badges of honor.
So you internalize it. You think this is just what it takes.
Exactly. If you're that high-earning doctor or engineer or lawyer trying to hit FI fast, that constant state of high pressure just gets rationalized away. It's the price of admission.
Right. Got to pay your dues.
That rationalization becomes like a mask, a mask of competence. It stops people seeing the real cost because they think, well, everyone else is doing it, or this feeling is just part of the job. And often, as the sources point out, the advice they get is just hang in there. But that advice might be coming from someone who's also deeply burned out.
Oh, wow. So it creates this kind of financially stressed echo chamber.
Precisely. Everyone's validating everyone else's unsustainable behavior.
Okay, so let's get specific then. The clinical definition. Understanding the components has got to be the first step to spotting it right. What are those key dimensions the sources talk about?
Yeah, they usually manifest in three core dimensions. These are often measured with tools like the Maslach Burnout Inventory.
Okay.
So first, there's emotional exhaustion. And this isn't just feeling physically tired, it's feeling emotionally drained, depleted, utterly worn out by the demands of your work.
Like you've got nothing left to give.
Exactly. Zero emotional reserves. It often shows up as a severe lack of motivation, maybe even a persistent dread about starting the next workday, just feeling like you're running on fumes, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically.
Got it. What's the second one?
Second is depersonalization, or sometimes it's called cynicism. This is where you start to feel numb, detached. You develop this negative, maybe even resentful attitude towards colleagues, clients, patients, or just your role in general. You find yourself just going through the motions.
So the quality of your work might still seem okay on the surface.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for high performers. But internally, you've checked out. You've become indifferent. For someone chasing FI, this can morph into this deep resentment towards the whole system they feel trapped in. Just breeds negativity.
Okay, emotional exhaustion, cynicism. And the third one. You said this one really hits high achievers hard.
It does. It's reduced personal accomplishment.
Yeah.
This is where, even if you're objectively succeeding, hitting targets, closing deals, getting promotions.
Stuff that looks good on paper.
Exactly. Despite all that external validation, you feel ineffective, unproductive. Like your work doesn't really matter anymore, or you're just faking it.
The imposter syndrome connection.
Huge driver of imposter syndrome among high earners. They look at their actual achievements, their big salary, their fancy title, and they just feel hollow. They start questioning if they can keep it up or if they were ever really good enough in the first place.
Wow. So that's where the very foundation of their identity, often tied to their career success, starts to crumble.
That's a great way to put it. It really cracks the foundation.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this internal collapse happening, emotional, mental erosion, often while someone is aggressively saving money. Let's bring it back squarely to the finances. How does this quiet implosion translate into actual, tangible financial costs?
Oh, it translates into serious financial liability.
Yeah.
Serious. The research highlights huge costs for companies, right? Like that figure you mentioned earlier, potentially over $5 million a year for a 1,000-employee company, just from turnover and lost productivity.
Yeah, staggering.
But for the individual pursuing FI, the cost is maybe even more catastrophic because it hits their biggest lever.
Yeah.
Their income, their ability to earn.
Okay, how so? What's the first hit?
First, you see reduced productivity and earning potential. Simple as that. When you're emotionally and mentally fried, everything takes longer. Chronic stress creates this cognitive load that impairs your executive function, your ability to plan, focus, make complex decisions. So you take longer to do tasks. You avoid the hard stuff.
Like what kind of hard stuff?
Things that require deep mental engagement. Maybe it's complex analysis, strategic planning, even just tedious but necessary admin like charting for doctors or detailed documentation for consultants. You put it off.
In that 10% drop you mentioned in the outline, can you walk us through a real-world example for a high earner?
Absolutely. Let's take a specialized consultant. Maybe they bill $300 an hour. Burnout doesn't mean they just stop working cold turkey.
Right.
It means they start subtly avoiding the tasks that take extra mental energy but yield the highest returns. Maybe they delay writing that killer proposal that could land a huge new client.
Okay.
Or they put off the complex, time-consuming paperwork needed for a crucial certification that would boost their rates. If their billable productivity dips even just 10%, say from 50 hours a week down to 45.
That's 5 hours.
5 hours at $300 an hour. That's $1,500 a week in lost potential revenue.
Wow.
Per week. Yeah. That adds up fast. Nearly $75,000 a year. Gone. Burnout essentially slams the door shut on those extra income opportunities, side gigs, consulting, teaching, leadership roles, because the person is just too drained. Their brain literally says, nope, can't handle one more thing.
And that directly eats into their ability to accelerate FI. And I guess it gets way worse if they reach a breaking point and just quit.
Which brings us right to the second major financial hit. Career detours and early exit, often called reactive quitting. There is a world of difference between strategically retiring early because you've crunched the numbers and hit your goal.
That's a dream, right? The planned exit.
That's the rational planned exit.
Yeah.
Versus making a sudden desperate decision to walk away from a six, maybe even seven-figure income, simply because the emotional exhaustion is unbearable.
Okay, hang on. Let's pause on that reactive quitting because it feels counterintuitive for someone so focused on numbers, right? How does burnout actually hijack that strategic, rational part of the brain? Is it just the exhaustion, or is there like documented cognitive decline that makes them ignore the spreadsheets they lived by?
That's a really insightful question, and the sources suggest it's definitely a mix of both. Chronic stress literally floods the prefrontal cortex that's the brain's CEO, responsible for planning, rational thought, impulse control.
Okay.
When you're stuck in that constant fight-or-flight mode, your brain defaults to short-term survival thinking. It wants immediate relief. So it prioritizes escaping the pain now over long-term consequences. All-or-nothing thinking takes over.
So what are the red flags? How can someone or their partner maybe tell the difference between a strategic pivot and this reactive burnout-fueled quitting?
The sources point to some clear warning signs for reactive quitting. First, there's usually a lack of a detailed financial plan. Strategic exits have spreadsheets, cash flow projections, scenario planning, maybe a 6-month transition strategy. Reactive quitting is often driven by an emotional, I just need this to stop feeling, with little clarity on what comes next financially.
No safety net planned out.
Often. No. Second, it's usually a sudden emotional decision. It happens after a particularly bad day or a blow-up meeting, not as the result of a calm 2-year wind-down plan. It feels impulsive.
Right.
And third, there's often no clear plan for after. Strategic early retirement usually involves excitement about what you'll do, hobbies, travel, volunteering. Reactive quitting is often just about escaping work. There's no positive vision, which can lead to feeling lost and depressed even after leaving because the underlying burnout hasn't been addressed, only the trigger.
So quitting at your peak earning potential reactively, the financial fallout could be huge.
Devastating. Years of lost income, potentially having to re-enter the workforce later at a lower level, drastically pushing back your actual FI date. It turns a temporary burnout crisis into a potential long-term financial setback.
And that lack of mental bandwidth, that cognitive fog, it doesn't just mess with your job performance or career decisions, it hits your ability to manage the money itself.
Precisely. That leads us straight to the third major financial cost, impaired financial decision-making. Cognitive overload clouds your judgment everywhere. You become more prone to making impulsive or, conversely, avoidant financial choices.
Okay. Impulsive how?
On the impulsive side, maybe rash career moves like job hopping without a strategy. Or worse, getting sucked into high-risk, get-rich-quick schemes or investments out of sheer desperation. Trying to find a shortcut to escape the current misery faster.
Okay, yeah. Desperation makes for bad investing. What about the avoidance side?
That's just as dangerous. The emotional exhaustion leads to financial paralysis. Those important but kind of complex tasks.
Like taxes or reviewing insurance.
Exactly. Updating your will, rebalancing your portfolio, maximizing your tax-advantaged accounts, even just sticking to a budget. They all require mental energy. When you're burned out, those critical tasks just pile up, untouched.
You just don't have the bandwidth.
Zero bandwidth. And here's a really common, costly outcome of that avoidance. You end up outsourcing everything to high-fee financial advisors, not because you strategically chose them, but because you simply can't face managing it yourself anymore.
The just take care of it for me trap.
Exactly. And those fees, often 1% or more of your assets year after year, they silently bleed your portfolio dry. It's a stealth sabotage of your FI goals. Protecting your own decision-making ability is actually a high-yield form of wealth preservation that people rarely talk about.
Wow. Okay, and we can't forget the spending side of things, that relief spending, the I worked hard, I deserve this purchases.
That's the fourth major liability. Increased spending as coping, or sometimes called escape spending. When your internal coping tools are depleted by burnout, you often turn to external things, specifically spending money for temporary relief. For high earners, this often looks like that work hard, play hard, or really work hard, spend hard lifestyle.
So what does that look like in practice?
It's justifying splurges as survival mechanisms. That last-minute first-class flight to a fancy resort, it's the only thing keeping me sane. Those daily food delivery subscriptions, the expensive gym membership you barely use, the high-end car lease.
It's all framed as necessary compensation for the demanding job.
Exactly. Necessary trade-offs. but it's a dangerous trap.
I can definitely see how that messes with the hedonic treadmill later, but how does it sabotage FI right now?
Two key ways. First, the obvious one. It directly tanks your savings rate. If you're dropping, say, $2,000 a month on escape spending, fancy dinners, impulse buys, luxury weekends, that's $24,000 a year not going into your investments, not compounding. That alone significantly slows your FI timeline.
Right. Simple math. What's the second way? You said it was more dangerous.
It is. It creates these self-imposed golden handcuffs. You inflate your lifestyle so much to cope with the stress.
The expensive car, the bigger house, the monthly burn rate.
Precisely. You get used to that higher standard of living, funded by the high-stress job, which means scaling back becomes financially impossible. You can't take that lower stress role or go part-time or take a sabbatical because you now need the high salary just to maintain the lifestyle you adopted to cope with the stress from the high salary.
Wow, that is a vicious cycle. You're trapped.
Utterly trapped, further entrenched in the unsustainable situation.
And finally, let's just quickly revisit the impact on relationships. You mentioned this earlier, but the financial cost here can be, well, devastating.
It's often the ultimate FI plan derailer. Think about it. Long hours, constant stress, zero emotional bandwidth left when you get home.
Recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. Burned out people often become irritable, withdrawn, just emotionally unavailable to their partners, their kids. They pour everything into work, leaving only the dregs for their family.
That disconnect must build up over time.
Huge resentment builds, chronic conflict, and ultimately it can lead to separation or divorce, which, purely from a financial perspective, is often catastrophic for an FI plan.
Losing half your assets.
Easily. Plus, expensive legal fees, the emotional turmoil that further impairs decision-making. It can completely reset your financial life and push FI back by a decade, maybe more.
So investing in your mental health, managing burnout, it's actually a direct investment in protecting your relationship and therefore your financial future.
It's a critical safeguard for the personal and financial structures holding everything together. Ignoring burnout isn't just emotionally taxing, it's actually financially negligent.
Negligent. Okay.
Yeah.
That really lands the point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've clearly established that the aggressive fire path, the one that often demands extreme sacrifice, creates the perfect breeding ground for this kind of burnout.
The pressure cooker environment.
And critics point out, rightly I think, that it turns life into this grueling race, just white-knuckling it towards a finish line, a trigger-pulling date.
Yeah, waiting for this magical future utopia.
But that utopia might end up being a huge psychological letdown, right?
That disappointment factor is huge, and it's something financial therapists see a lot with high achievers. When the focus becomes so intense, so ferocious, just on the money, on the accumulation, life genuinely becomes, as some report, full of anxiety, stress, and fear.
So the thing you're doing to supposedly buy future freedom is actually destroying your present peace of mind.
Precisely. The irony is thick. Aggressively saving, often driven by a fear of not having enough later, can paradoxically lead you to regret not spending more, not living more, while you were healthy and able.
Yeah, because life happens, right? Health issues, accidents. You might never actually get to use the freedom you starved yourself for.
It's a massive gamble. You're gambling your present quality of life, your health, your relationships on an uncertain future payoff.
And, okay, let's say you win the financial gamble. You hit the number, you didn't completely burn out your health. There's still this major psychological trap waiting, isn't there? We need to talk about the hedonic treadmill.
Ah, yes, the hedonic treadmill, or hedonic adaptation. It's fundamental to understanding why just having the money, hitting that FI number, doesn't automatically guarantee lasting happiness.
So what is it exactly? Break it down for us.
Basically, the theory is that humans have this tendency to quickly return to a relatively stable baseline level of happiness.
A sort of happiness set point.
Exactly, a set point, despite major life events, positive or negative. So in the context of wealth, when someone makes significantly more money or achieves a big financial goal like FI,
Their expectations rise.
their expectations, their desires, their definition of normal, it all rises in tandem. Lifestyle creep happens almost automatically.
So the goalposts for happiness just keep moving further away.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You adapt to the new, higher standard of living. That big house, that fancy car, that freedom from work. It feels amazing at first, but then it just becomes normal. The thrill wears off.
It stops bringing that sustained joy.
Right. The psychological mechanism involves these subtle cognitive shifts. Your values might change slightly, your attention shifts to the next goal, or you start comparing yourself to a new, wealthier peer group. The new baseline is established, and you're basically back where you started. happiness-wise.
Isn't there that famous study about lottery winners and accident victims that illustrates this?
The Brickman study from '78. Yes, it's a classic, though it has nuances.
Hmm.
They compared three groups: recent big lottery winners, recent accident victims who became paraplegic or quadriplegic, and a control group.
And the results were surprising, right?
Very counterintuitive. Immediately after the event, yet, the lottery winners reported a huge happiness spike, and the accident victims reported a major drop. No surprise there. But when they interviewed them again later, the researchers found that both groups tended to drift back significantly towards their pre-event happiness levels. The lottery winners weren't substantially happier overall than the control group in the long run.
They just got used to the money.
They adapted. And maybe more surprisingly, while the accident victims certainly faced immense permanent challenges, they also showed adaptation. They weren't as unhappy as one might predict, and they expected to continue adapting over time.
How does that happen? How does someone adapt to something so life-altering, like a severe disability, and regain a sense of well-being? What's the psychological mechanism there?
It's fascinating, really. The adaptation seems to involve a couple of key shifts. First, there's often a reevaluation of everyday pleasures. Things they might have taken for granted before the accident, a sunny day, a good conversation, simple comforts suddenly take on greater significance and bring renewed joy.
A shift in perspective, appreciation for the small things.
Exactly, their attention shifts. Second, their social comparisons tend to change. Instead of constantly comparing themselves to their former unimpaired self or to able-bodied people, they might start comparing themselves more to others in similar situations or focusing on their own progress and capabilities within their new reality.
So they reframe their situation.
They reframe. It allows them to regain a sense of control, agency, and ultimately well-being. It really shows how much our happiness is influenced by our perspective and adaptation, not just our objective circumstances.
Okay, but here's the crucial question for anyone pursuing FI. Is that happiness set point totally fixed? Are we just stuck? Because if it is, then, well, what's the point of all the hard work and sacrifice?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And thankfully, the answer seems to be no, it's not entirely fixed. While studies do suggest a significant genetic component, maybe up to 50% heritable.
So half might be baked in.
Roughly, maybe. But it's definitely not set in stone. Longitudinal studies show that major life events, especially those that permanently change your daily life and capabilities, like acquiring a severe disability, can lead to a lasting, though often small, shift in that baseline well-being. So the set point is sticky, but it seems to be somewhat flexible.
Okay, so there's some wiggle room. How do we influence it?
The really interesting insight comes when you look at the types of goals people pursue. Research suggests that attaching a lot of importance to zero-sum goals, things that are inherently competitive, or based on comparison.
Like career status, being richer than the next person, having the bigger house.
Exactly. Those kinds of goals, the research finds, actually have a small but statistically significant negative impact on your overall subjective well-being in the long run.
Wait, hang on. Negative. So chasing wealth and status purely for the sake of having more than others can actually make you less happy?
It seems counterintuitive, but yes, in many cases. Because zero-sum goals depend on external validation and constant comparison. There's always someone richer, more successful, climbing faster. The goalposts keep moving, so you never feel like you've truly won or arrived. It breeds dissatisfaction.
Okay, so what's the alternative? What kind of goals do boost happiness?
The research points strongly towards non-zero-sum goals. These are goals that enrich your life and the lives of others simultaneously. They're not about winning at someone else's expense.
Like what?
Think deep family connections, strong relationships, contributing to your community, altruistic pursuits, personal growth that isn't tied to status. These kinds of goals are found to significantly increase subjective well-being. They provide an internal sense of meaning, purpose, and connection that pure wealth accumulation often can't deliver.
Wow. Okay. That connects directly back to some of the criticisms we hear from within the FI community itself, doesn't it? That whole unhealthy relationship with work,
Yeah.
the constant guilt around spending money.
It's a massive psychological hurdle, often baked into that aggressive FI mindset. When the entire focus is just maximizing the savings rate to escape the present job you hate, then every dollar spent on something enjoyable feels like a setback. It triggers immense guilt. People report agonizing over small purchases, a coffee, a book, dinner with friends, constantly thinking, that money could have been invested.
That sounds exhausting and not very fun.
It's incredibly corrosive. This obsessive frugality, it's often driven by this deep-seated fear of scarcity, fear of derailing the plan, fear of not escaping fast enough.
And you mentioned it can spill over into how people treat others, that sense of superiority.
Absolutely. When you're practicing extreme deprivation yourself, it's easy to become judgmental towards people who aren't. You start seeing anyone who spends money on non-essentials as reckless, undisciplined, maybe even morally failing.
Look at them, wasting money on lattes.
It's exactly that kind of attitude. But that judgmental stance is often just an external projection of their own internal stress, their own anxiety about the sacrifices they're making. They need to validate their extreme choices by looking down on others.
And critics also point out, fairly, that many pursuing extreme FI don't fully acknowledge the privileges that got them there. The high income, the good education, maybe just sheer luck. That combo of intense deprivation and feeling morally superior, it doesn't sound like a very pleasant path to freedom.
It really isn't. And ultimately, that unpleasant, unsustainable path kind of defeats the whole purpose of FI, doesn't it? If the end goal is financial security so you can live a more fulfilling life, then sacrificing your fulfillment, your relationships, and your health for years to get there is just deeply counterproductive. It's a huge gamble. Delayed gratification only works if you actually arrive at the destination in a state where you can enjoy the reward.
Yeah, if you get there completely depleted, isolated, maybe needing years just to recover, that FI number suddenly loses a lot of its meaning, doesn't it?
It becomes hollow.
Okay, so let's recap. Extreme sacrifice often fuels burnout. Simply hitting the FI number doesn't guarantee happiness because of the hedonic treadmill. So what's the smarter play? What's the sustainable strategy here?
Well, this is exactly where the sources guide us towards a more balanced alternative. It's often called slow FI.
Slow FI.
Okay, it's basically a philosophical shift, but also a practical one. It rejects that core idea that you must defer all enjoyment, all fulfillment, until some magical retirement date in the future.
So it's not about not reaching FI, but about how you get there.
Precisely. It's about intentionally choosing to make financial progress while also actively prioritizing your present well-being, your health, your relationships, enjoying life along the way.
It sounds less like that frantic, desperate race we talked about and more like a well-planned expedition. You still have a destination FI, but you're actually taking care to enjoy the journey, the scenery, the people you're with. You pace yourself.
That's a perfect analogy. And the core principles of slow FI are specifically designed to mitigate those burnout risks and financial liabilities we spent the first half discussing.
Okay, so what are those key principles? What does slow FI look like in practice?
Well, some of the key tenets include, first, prioritizing health, relationships, and experiences now. Not treating them as luxuries you can afford later, but as essential, non-negotiable parts of your budget today. Think of them as preventative investments.
Investing in well-being now to prevent costly problems later. Makes sense.
Second, being open to taking strategic career breaks or sabbaticals. Using periods of rest not just as vacation, but as intentional recovery time to prevent that chronic stress buildup and restore your mental capital.
Okay, building in recovery periods.
Third, maybe pursuing more meaningful work. This might mean aligning your career more closely with your personal values, even if it involves potentially sacrificing some income for greater day-to-day satisfaction. This directly combats that cynicism and depersonalization dimension of burnout.
Trading some money for meaning, potentially?
Potentially, yes, or finding ways to integrate more meaning into your current role. And fourth, saving consistently and flexibly. Still aiming for a healthy savings rate? Absolutely.
Right.
But one that allows for growth without inducing that intense, psychologically damaging level of deprivation. It's about the marathon, not the sprint. Longevity over extreme acceleration.
Okay, slow FI. Feels more human, more sustainable. Let's bring this back to the hard numbers one last time. We established burnout is a financial liability. What's the flip side? What's the actual financial return on investment? The ROI of prioritizing mental health, maybe adopting a slow FI approach? How do we quantify the value of having a clear head?
We quantify it mostly by looking at the massive costs you avoid and by measuring the positive impact on your career, longevity, and efficiency. It's genuinely a high-yield, low-risk investment in your future.
Okay, break that down. What's the first big ROI?
First, and maybe the most straightforward, longer career equals a bigger nest egg. We know burnout is a primary driver pushing high earners out of their fields prematurely. They often leave not because they hate the core work, but because the pace, the pressure, it just becomes unbearable. So Is prioritizing your mental health maybe by taking those sabbaticals, setting firm boundaries, working slightly less intensely, allows you to stay in your high-earning career just, say, 5 years longer than you otherwise would have.
Hmm.
The financial impact is enormous.
Okay, let's run that math again. Let's use that $300,000 a year example. 5 extra years in the saddle.
That's $1.5 million in additional gross income.
Why?
Right there. And that's before you even factor in investment growth or additional retirement contributions on that income.
Wow. $1.5 million a minimum just from lasting longer.
Minimum. And think about the compounding. If that person invested even half of that extra income over those 5 years, the downstream effect in their retirement decades later could easily be several $1,000,000 more. Investing in mental health is directly protecting your human capital, which is by far your biggest asset during your earning years.
Okay, that's huge. What's the second ROI?
Second, we gain improved efficiency, which leads to higher income or more free time. Mental clarity, being free from that cognitive drag of chronic stress, it restores your focus. Tasks take less time.
Right. You're not spending hours procrastinating or redoing work because your brain is foggy.
Exactly. You're not spending weekends catching up on paperwork because you were too emotionally depleted during the week. This restored efficiency frees up valuable mental energy and actual time.
Which you could use for
Strategic activities, maybe taking on higher value projects, pursuing performance bonuses, networking for better opportunities, or simply avoiding costly mistakes that require rework. In many professional fields, speed, accuracy, and strategic thinking, all enhanced by mental clarity, directly translate to better performance reviews, bigger bonuses, and faster promotions.
Okay. And this next point feels absolutely critical, especially considering the potential financial devastation we talked about.
Yes. Third, stronger relationships mean less financial disruption. This is pure, calculated risk mitigation. When you're less irritable, less withdrawn, more present and engaged at home, you safeguard your relationships. You avoid the constant friction, the resentment, the emotional distance that burnout breeds. And by doing that, you dramatically reduce the risk of separation or divorce.
Which, as we said, can financially wreck an FI plan.
Completely. Losing half your assets, the legal fees, the ongoing support payments. It's a financial nightmare. So think of things like date nights, quality time, even couples counseling, not just as personal choices, but as incredibly effective financial insurance against a catastrophic loss.
That ties right back into avoiding that escape spending too, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Point 4. Better emotional regulation results in lower lifestyle inflation. Mental clarity helps you manage those stress responses more effectively. You're less likely to fall into that "I deserve this" trap, using impulsive spending to numb the pain of burnout.
Right. Your spending becomes more intentional.
Exactly. When your spending aligns with your actual values and long-term goals, rather than just being a reaction to stress, you naturally keep lifestyle inflation in check. You avoid building those golden handcuffs. Mental stability is key to maintaining consistent, rational spending habits.
And finally, protecting that mental clarity means you keep making smart choices overall.
Absolutely. The fifth ROI. Clearer thinking leads to smarter decisions. Across the board. Career moves, investment choices, managing your budget, knowing when to hire help, strategically, not reactively. When you're not operating in survival mode, your judgment is sounder.
So you avoid those impulsive decisions, quitting too soon, chasing risky investments, ignoring crucial planning, overpaying for advice out of desperation.
Precisely. You maintain the mental sharpness needed to navigate your financial life strategically, protecting the wealth you've worked so hard to build.
So really, this slow FI approach, this focus on mental health, it isn't just about feeling better day to day. It's about ensuring your entire financial engine, your career longevity, your relationships, your decision-making is protected by maintaining your most valuable asset, ourself, your human capital.
That sums it up perfectly.
Okay, this is all incredibly insightful. Let's pivot now to really practical, actionable steps. People listening might be thinking, okay, I see the risks. I like the idea of sustainability. What do I actually do?
Right. How do we translate this into action? The sources offer some very concrete strategies, and it helps to think about protecting your mental health with the same rigor you apply to your investment strategy.
Okay, I like that framing. Identify goals, implement high-yield actions, cut what's not working.
Exactly. So the very first step is deeply personal. 1. Know your own burnout signals. And be honest with yourself. Burnout isn't just having a bad week. You need to pay attention to those specific clinical signs we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Are you feeling increasingly numb or cynical about work? Are you dreading Mondays more than usual? Are you getting disproportionately irritable or withdrawn at home? Are you constantly fantasizing about just quitting, escaping?
Recognizing it early is key before it spirals.
Crucial. Spotting that shift from I'm stressed to I'm emotionally exhausted and detached is a signal that you need to intervene proactively before the serious financial and personal damage sets in.
Okay, so self-awareness first. What's next?
Next, you need data. 2. Audit your time and energy. Measure what matters. We track our spending down to the penny for FI, right?
Religiously.
We need to apply similar discipline to tracking our time and, crucially, our mental energy. Burnout often creeps in when we're constantly pouring resources into low-value tasks or fighting against disorganized systems.
So figure out where the real drains are.
Exactly. Keep a simple log for a week. Note down your main activities, work tasks, meetings, chores, social stuff, and then briefly note how you felt afterward. Drained, energized, neutral. Identify the energy vampires in your schedule. You can't optimize how you spend your energy if you don't know where it's going.
That audit sounds like it would naturally reveal where the boundaries are weak or non-existent.
It almost always does, which leads directly to step 3. 3. Set hard boundaries. This is tough, especially for high achievers who are often conditioned to be always on.
Yeah, equating availability with competence or commitment.
Right. Doctors available to patients 24/7, consultants answering client emails at midnight. But this constant availability is a primary driver of burnout. You have to treat weak boundaries like a terrible investment that's consistently losing you money, or in this case, mental energy.
So how do you start? Setting boundaries can feel really uncomfortable at first.
Start small, but be concrete and consistent. Maybe it's, I will not check work email after 7 p.m., period. Or using separate phones or laptops for work and personal life. Blocking out actual time in your calendar for breaks, lunch, exercise, and treating those appointments as seriously as a client meeting.
Saying no more often.
Definitely. Learning to politely decline non-essential commitments, extra projects, committees that don't align with your core priorities. You are the only one who can enforce these lines, and the sources are clear. Setting boundaries is one of the highest ROI actions against burnout.
Okay, these first 3 are really about self-management and protecting your time energy. What about seeking external help?
That's crucial too. But first,
Right. Before we dive into those next strategies, the ones focusing on getting support and making big decisions, if you're finding this deep dive valuable, if it's sparking some thoughts for you, please do us a huge favor. Like this discussion, share it with maybe a colleague, a friend, anyone you know who might be on that FI path and feeling the strain. And definitely make sure you subscribe to Project Fire and hit that notification bell. Your support genuinely helps us keep creating these deep dives and get them out to more people.
okay, so picking back up, strategy number 4 requires a significant mental shift for many people. 4, reframe therapy or coaching. Stop seeing it as something you only do when you're in crisis, or as a sign you've failed somehow.
See it differently.
See it as a professional development tool, an investment in your performance, your resilience, your career longevity, just like you'd consult a financial expert for your portfolio or a lawyer for legal advice. Working with a therapist or a coach who specializes in high-stress professions can help you develop better stress management techniques, gain clarity on your values and goals, and crucially, help you avoid making those costly, burnout-driven career missteps we talked about.
So it's proactive performance enhancement, not just reactive damage control.
Exactly. It's a high ROI tool for protecting your income stream and your long-term financial stability.
And that kind of support seems especially vital when someone is feeling pushed to the edge, maybe contemplating that reactive quitting.
Which brings us squarely to the 5th point, and this one is absolutely critical. 5, create a plan before you quit. If burnout has you fantasizing daily about just walking away, hitting the eject button, do not make that decision impulsively.
Pause. Breathe. Plan.
Yes. Remember, burnout clouds judgment. It fosters that black and white all-or-nothing thinking. So before you make a life-altering career decision, talk to someone you trust, a mentor, a therapist, a financial planner. Run the numbers conservatively.
And explore alternatives.
Explore all the non-quitting options first. Can you negotiate reduced hours? Go part-time. Switch to a less demanding role within the same company. Take a formal leave of absence or a sabbatical. Could a different team or manager make a difference?
Treat the decision with the gravity it deserves.
Exactly. Treat your high-earning career like the incredibly valuable financial asset it is. Don't just throw it away in a moment of desperation. Make sure any pivot is strategic, data-driven, and thought through, not just a panicked reaction.
That's such practical, important advice. A built-in cooling off period and exploration phase. Okay, what's the last step?
The final piece of the puzzle is 6. Stay connected. Isolation is like gasoline on the burnout fire. Make a conscious effort to maintain regular, genuine connections with trusted colleagues who understand your work environment, with peers outside of work, with friends, family, support groups, whatever works for you,
Why is connection so protective?
because it provides perspective. When you're isolated, every little frustration at work can feel like a massive personal failure. Talking to others helps normalize your struggles, reminds you you're not alone, and keeps stress manageable. It grounds you. Just like diversifying investments, diversifying your support system builds resilience.
Hmm.
And like all these strategies, the earlier you start prioritizing connection and mental health, the better the compounding returns on your long-term well-being and financial stability.
Putting this all together, here's where it gets really, really interesting for me. We always talk about the path to financial independence being defined by your savings rate, right? That's the magic number.
That's the core metric everyone focuses on.
But maybe the quality of that path and, frankly, your ability to actually enjoy the destination when you get there is defined less by your savings rate and more by your, I don't know, your sustainability rate.
I love that, your sustainability rate. That captures it perfectly. We've clearly seen how that extreme sacrifice approach, the one totally driven by the retire early obsession,
Yeah.
it risks burning out your career, your earning potential, it damages vital relationships, it erodes your mental clarity, your capacity for good decision-making. It basically torches the very resources you need to sustain the journey and enjoy the outcome.
Whereas slow FI, or just maybe sustainable FI, it flips the script.
Completely. It integrates mental health, present enjoyment, strong relationships, not as nice-to-haves, but as essential financial safeguards. They ensure you maintain the physical and emotional resilience you need to actually thrive, both on the path to FI and long after you've reached it.
And the research backs this up, right? We know that unexpected life events, serious illness, relationship breakdowns, those are huge derailers for FI plans, often financially unrecoverable.
Absolutely. Especially when healthcare costs are so unpredictable. And we also know from the happiness research that our long-term psychological well-being is much more strongly influenced by those non-zero-sum goals.
The ones that enrich relationships contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. Investments in connection, meaning, and community, not just investments in the stock market.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you, the listener.
Building on everything we've discussed, if we accept that your health, physical and mental, and the stability of your key relationships are arguably your greatest, most fundamental assets,
More important than any stock or bond.
and if we know that time and, yes, even money spent on non-zero-sum goals, things like strengthening those relationships, investing in preventative health, giving back to causes you care about, are scientifically proven to increase your subjective well-being and act as powerful buffers against major life disruptions.
Okay.
Then here's a question to really wrestle with. Are you treating your budget for health, your budget for relationship maintenance, and maybe even your charitable giving budget, not as discretionary expenses, but as critical, non-negotiable components of your long-term investment strategy? Are you funding your sustainability rate as seriously as you're funding your savings rate?